The text from my mother was clear. Do not come to our anniversary party tonight. 25 years of marriage, and somehow I was persona non grata. My sister Melody had been giving me the cold shoulder for weeks, whispering behind closed doors with our parents. I thought it was about my recent divorce, maybe they were embarrassed. But when Melody posted that Instagram photo at midnight showing my parents cutting their anniversary cake with a surprise guest, my blood turned to ice. The man in the background was supposed to be dead. Hey everyone, before we dive into this wild family drama that literally turned my world upside down, drop a comment, letting me know where you're watching from. If you've ever felt excluded from family events, you'll definitely want to hear how this story unfolds. Make sure to hit that like button and subscribe, because this revenge story has more twists than a pretzel factory. Trust me, you won't see this ending coming. I stared at my phone screen until my eyes burned. The timestamp read 11:47 p.m. just 13 minutes ago. There he was, clear as day, in the background of Melody's perfectly curated anniversary post. Uncle David, my father's younger brother, who had supposedly died in a hiking accident 3 years ago in Colorado. I remembered the funeral, the closed casket, my father's devastated tears. But there he stood, very much alive, wearing a navy blazer and holding a champagne flute. My hands shook as I screenshot the image and zoomed in. Same crooked smile, same distinctive scar above his left eyebrow from when we were kids, and he fell off his bike. This was not some look-alike or cruel coincidence. This was my uncle who had vanished with $200,000 from my grandmother's estate, right before his convenient death. I called Melody immediately. Straight to voicemail. Then Mom. Voicemail. Dad. Voicemail. They had all turned off their phones, probably anticipating this exact scenario. The pieces started falling into place like a horrifying puzzle. 3 years ago, when Uncle David disappeared, I had been the one pushing hardest for a police investigation. I had questioned the circumstances of his hiking trip, the fact that his body was never recovered, the suspicious timing of his disappearance right after Grandma Rose's will was read. My family had called me paranoid, grief-stricken, unable to accept that accidents happen. My father had actually yelled at me at the funeral, telling me to stop dishonoring David's memory with my conspiracy theories. Melody had sided with them, saying I was being disrespectful during a time of mourning. Now I understood why they had been freezing me out. They all knew. They had all known he was alive this entire time, and they had been protecting him while letting me believe I was losing my mind. I grabbed my laptop and started digging through old emails, bank statements, anything I could find. My grandmother had left her estate to be split equally between her 3 grandchildren, me, Melody, and our cousin Jake from Uncle David's side. When David died, his portion was supposed to go to Jake. But Jake had been conveniently traveling in Europe at the time, unreachable for months. I pulled up my bank statements from 3 years ago. My inheritance, $67,000. Melody's portion the same. But the total estate had been valued at $400,000. Someone had walked away with over $200,000 that should have been split 3 ways. My phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. Stop digging, Scarlett. Some stones are better left unturned. The blood in my veins turned to ice water. Only my family knew about my tendency to investigate things too deeply. This message was a warning, and it meant they knew I had seen the photo. I screenshot the threatening text and saved it to a secure cloud folder. If they thought they could intimidate me into silence, they had severely underestimated how far I was willing to go for the truth. The next morning, I drove to the location tagged in Melody's post, the Riverside Country Club where my parents had held their anniversary celebration. I knew the events coordinator there, Rebecca, from my previous job at the catering company. "Oh, hi, Scarlett. Rebecca greeted me warmly. "I was surprised not to see you at your parents' party last night. Such a beautiful celebration." "I was out of town," I lied smoothly. "But I heard it was lovely. I was hoping to get copies of the professional photos for a surprise scrapbook. Do you know who they hired?" Rebecca pulled up the event details on her computer. "Let me see. Looks like they used Morrison Photography. The photographer mentioned he got some great candid shots during the dinner. Your family seemed so happy to be all together again." All together again. The phrase hit me like a slap. She knew. Even the events coordinator knew that David was alive, and this was some kind of reunion. "Did they mention anything about my Uncle David? I know his situation has been complicated." Rebecca looked confused for a moment, then her expression shifted to understanding. "Oh, you mean the gentleman with the scar. Your father introduced him as David, said he was so grateful to have his brother back in his life. It sounded like there had been some kind of family misunderstanding that finally got resolved." Family misunderstanding. That was rich. Try fraud theft and faking your own death. I thanked Rebecca and left my mind racing. The professional photographer would have dozens of photos, probably including clear shots of David's face. That would be evidence I could take to the authorities. Morrison Photography was located in a strip mall 20 minutes away. I walked in and explained that I was following up on my parents' anniversary party photos. "Oh, the Henderson celebration, beautiful event. I actually just finished editing those photos this morning. Would you like to see a preview?" My heart pounded as he pulled up the gallery on his computer. Photo after photo of my family laughing, toasting, celebrating, and there was David front and center in at least a dozen shots, no longer hiding in the background. "Could I get copies of these, all of them?" "Of course. Are you thinking prints or digital files?" "Digital files. High resolution. All of them." As I waited for the photographer to prepare the files, I called my lawyer, Patricia Wong, who had helped me through my recent divorce. "Patricia, I need to ask you something confidential. If someone faked their own death to avoid financial obligations and then resurfaced years later, what kind of charges could they face?" "That would depend on the specifics, but we could be looking at fraud, theft, insurance fraud, if there was a life insurance payout, tax evasion, identity theft. Scarlett, is everything okay?" "I will call you back with details. Just wanted to know what we might be dealing with." The photographer handed me a USB drive containing over 200 high-resolution photos. Evidence of David's very public resurrection, surrounded by family members who had been complicit in his deception. I sat in my car in the parking lot and called the Colorado State Police tip line. After being transferred twice, I reached Detective Martinez, who had worked on Uncle David's original missing person case. "Ma'am, I remember that case well. The family was convinced he had fallen into the river during a solo hike. We searched for weeks but never recovered a body." "Are you telling me he is alive?" "I am telling you I have photographic evidence that he was alive and well as of last night attending a family party in California. And I believe this was not a case of amnesia or being lost. I think this was intentional fraud." Detective Martinez was quiet for a long moment. "Ma'am, if what you are saying is true, this could be a very serious criminal matter. I am going to need you to send me everything you have." Detective Martinez called me back within 2 hours of receiving the photos. His voice was tight with controlled anger. "Miss Henderson, I have been working missing persons cases for 15 years, and this is one of the most brazen examples of fraud I have ever encountered. We found additional evidence in our files that we need to discuss. Can you come to Colorado, or would you prefer we handle this through your local authorities?" "I can fly out tomorrow. Detective, what additional evidence?" 3 days after your uncle was reported missing, someone used his credit card at a gas station in Nevada. The security footage was too blurry to make a positive identification, but the timestamp and location never made sense with the hiking timeline. We noted it in the file but could not pursue it without a body or more concrete evidence. My stomach dropped. They had suspected something was wrong from the beginning, but my family's grief-stricken act had been convincing enough to halt the investigation. "There is more," Detective Martinez continued. "Your uncle had taken out a substantial life insurance policy 6 months before his disappearance. The beneficiary was listed as his son, Jake, but the payout was delayed due to the missing body. When we close this case, that insurance company is going to want their money back, plus damages." I booked a flight to Denver for the following morning and spent the rest of the day building a comprehensive case file. I printed every photo, organized them chronologically, and prepared a timeline of events. But more importantly, I started thinking strategically about my family's involvement. My parents had to know David was alive. The anniversary party proved they had been in contact with him probably for years. Melody clearly knew, given her careful photography and immediate social media blackout after posting. But what about Jake? I found Jake's social media profiles and started scrolling back 3 years. His European travel photos had been posted consistently during the time period when David supposedly died. But as I looked closer, I noticed something odd. The geotags on his photos showed him in Germany, France, and Italy, but several of the background locations looked suspiciously similar to places in Colorado and Nevada. Jake had not been traveling through Europe. He had been in the American West, probably helping his father disappear and establish a new identity. I called my cousin Emma, Jake's sister, who lived in Portland, and had always been the black sheep of the family. If anyone would be honest with me, it would be Emma. "Scarlett. Oh my God, I was wondering when you would call me about this mess." "Emma, what do you know?" "I know my brother has been sending me photos from his European adventure for 3 years, except I reverse-searched half of them, and they were stock photos he bought online. I know my dad supposedly died in a hiking accident, but his life insurance company has been calling me every 6 months, asking strange questions about his mental health and financial situation before his death." Emma had been suspicious too, but unlike me, she had kept her mouth shut and her distance. "Emma, I have proof that David is alive. Photos from last night. What I need to know is how deep this goes and how long you have known. Honestly, I suspected something was wrong when Jake started sending me money last year. $5,000 every few months, always from different accounts, always with some story about his successful freelance work in Europe. Scarlett, Jake has never held a job for more than 6 months in his life. There was no way he was making that kind of money doing graphic design." The money trail. That was the key I had been missing. If David had stolen from Grandma Rose's estate and possibly collected life insurance money, that cash had to go somewhere. He could not just hide it under a mattress for 3 years. "Emma, do you still have records of those money transfers from Jake?" "Every single one. Screenshots, bank records, everything. I kept them because something felt off." I asked Emma to send me everything she had, and within an hour my email was full of evidence. Jake had been sending Emma money from at least 4 different accounts, none of which matched his known banking information. The amounts were always just under the federal reporting threshold for suspicious transactions. I called Patricia Wong back and explained the expanding scope of what we were dealing with. "Scarlett, this is not just about your uncle anymore. You are describing an organized conspiracy involving multiple family members, potential money laundering, insurance fraud, and theft from an estate. You need to be very careful about how you proceed." "What do you mean?" "I mean, your family clearly went to great lengths to keep you out of this conspiracy, which suggests they see you as a threat. The fact that you received a threatening text message means they are monitoring your actions. If there is as much money involved as you suspect, people might be willing to take extreme measures to protect themselves." The reality of my situation hit me like a cold wave. I was not just exposing a financial crime. I was potentially putting myself in danger. My family had successfully deceived law enforcement insurance companies and extended family for 3 years. They had resources coordination and apparently no moral boundaries. But I also realized I had something they did not: allies who were outside their circle of control. Emma was ready to cooperate with authorities. Detective Martinez was eager to solve a case that had bothered him for years. The insurance company would be highly motivated to recover their money. I spent that evening creating multiple copies of all evidence and storing them in different locations. I sent complete files to Patricia Wong, Detective Martinez, and Emma, with instructions to contact authorities if anything happened to me. Then, I made a decision that would change everything. Instead of flying to Colorado alone, I was going to force my family's hand first. I composed a group text message to my parents, Melody and Jake. Family meeting tomorrow at 2 p.m. at Mom and Dad's house. We need to discuss Uncle David's remarkable recovery from death and what everyone plans to do about the money that has been stolen over the past 3 years. This is not optional. If anyone chooses not to attend, I will assume they are not interested in handling this privately, and I will proceed with involving law enforcement immediately. I hit send and turned off my phone. Tomorrow, I would walk into that house and confront my entire family with evidence of their crimes. They could either come clean and work with me to make things right, or they could continue lying and face the consequences. Either way, the truth was coming out. I arrived at my parents' house 15 minutes early and parked across the street. My hands were steady, but my heart was racing as I watched my family's cars pull into the driveway one by one. Dad's blue sedan arrived first, followed by Melody's white SUV, and finally Jake's black pickup truck with Nevada plates that I had never noticed before. Nevada, where Uncle David's credit card had been used 3 years ago. I waited until exactly 2 p.m. before walking up to the front door. I did not knock. I used my key, the one they had never asked me to return, and walked straight into the living room where my family was assembled like a tribunal. Mom sat rigid on the couch, her face pale and drawn. Dad stood by the fireplace, arms crossed, his expression unreadable. Melody perched on the edge of an armchair, phone in hand, probably recording. And Jake lounged in the corner wearing a smirk that made my skin crawl. "Hello, everyone. Thank you for making time for this family meeting." "Scarlett," Dad began, his voice carefully controlled, "I think there has been some kind of misunderstanding." The only misunderstanding, I interrupted, placing my laptop on the coffee table, is that you all thought I would never figure out what you have been doing. I opened the laptop and displayed the anniversary party photos in a slideshow. The room fell silent as image after image filled the screen, showing Uncle David clearly visible, very much alive, celebrating with the family that had mourned his death. "David Michael Henderson," I said, reading from my notes. "Reported missing on July 15th, 3 years ago. Presumed dead after falling into the Colorado River during a solo hiking expedition. Except here he is last Saturday night toasting your 25th wedding anniversary." Mom started crying. Not the manipulative tears I had seen her use during family arguments, but genuine, terrified sobs. "Scarlett, please," she whispered. "You do not understand the whole situation." "Then explain it to me. Explain how my uncle, who stole $200,000 from Grandma Rose's estate, managed to rise from the dead. Explain how Jake has been laundering money through European bank accounts while pretending to travel abroad. Explain how you all sat at his funeral and watched me grieve while knowing he was alive." Jake stood up slowly, his casual demeanor shifting to something more menacing. You always were too nosy for your own good, cousin. Some family business is not your concern. Family business. I laughed, but there was no humor in it. Jake? I have been tracking the money transfers you have been sending to Emma. 4 different bank accounts, all linked to shell companies registered in Nevada. I have security footage from the gas station where David used his credit card 3 days after he supposedly died. I have insurance documents showing a $600,000 life insurance policy that has been in limbo for 3 years. Dad's face went ashen. 600,000, David told us it was 50,000. The room exploded into chaos. Mom started screaming at Dad about lies and deception. Melody began typing frantically on her phone. Jake moved toward the door, but I stepped into his path. Nobody leaves until we sort this out. I have copies of everything stored in multiple locations. Running will just make things worse. Scarlett, Dad said, sinking into his chair. You have to understand. David came to us 2 years ago. He was desperate. He had gotten involved with some very dangerous people, gambling debts, loan sharks. The money from Mom's estate was not enough to cover what he owed. When the opportunity came to disappear to start fresh, it seemed like the only way to save his life. So you all decided to help him commit fraud? Melody finally spoke, her voice shaky. It was not supposed to hurt anyone. The insurance money was going to be split. Jake was going to get his father's portion legitimately, and the rest was going to pay back Grandma's estate with interest. We were going to tell you eventually, once everything was settled. Tell me. I stared at her in disbelief. Melody, you have been lying to me for 3 years. You let me believe I was paranoid and disrespectful for questioning David's death. You excluded me from family events to protect this secret. When exactly were you planning to tell me? Mom stopped crying and looked at me with something approaching hatred. We were protecting you, Scarlett. You and that moral high horse of yours. You would have gone straight to the police. You are absolutely right. I would have, just like I am going to do now. I pulled out my phone and showed them Detective Martinez's contact information. I am flying to Colorado tomorrow to meet with the detective who worked David's original missing person case. He has been waiting 3 years for new evidence, and I just handed him a complete case on a silver platter. Jake stepped closer, his hands clenched into fists. You do not understand what you are messing with here. The people David owed money to, they do not just forget about $600,000 debts. If you expose this, you could get him killed. You could get all of us killed. Then maybe you all should have thought about that before you decided to become criminals. Dad stood up abruptly. Scarlett, I am your father. I am asking you as family to walk away from this. We will pay back every penny that was taken from the estate. We will make this right privately. How? Where are you going to get $600,000 plus 3 years of interest and penalties? The room fell silent. They did not have an answer because there was no legitimate way for them to raise that kind of money. They had committed crimes thinking they could control the consequences, but now reality was closing in. My phone buzzed with a text from Emma. On my way to Portland Police Station with all the financial records. They are connecting me with Colorado authorities. I showed the text to my family. Emma is already cooperating with law enforcement. This is happening whether I participate or not. Mom started crying again. Scarlett, please. Your father could go to prison. I could lose my nursing license. Melody's children could grow up with a criminal mother. Is being right worth destroying your entire family? That question hit me harder than I expected. These people had lied to me, excluded me, threatened me, and committed serious crimes. But they were still my family. Growing up, Dad had taught me to ride a bike and helped me with homework. Mom had comforted me through heartbreaks and celebrated my achievements. Melody had been my maid of honor and my shoulder to cry on during my divorce. But they had also chosen to protect a criminal over their own family member. They had gaslit me for 3 years, making me doubt my instincts and question my sanity. They had threatened me when I got too close to the truth. "Where is David now?" I asked quietly. Jake and Dad exchanged glances. "He left town this morning," Jake admitted. "After Melody realized you had seen the photos, we warned him that things were about to get complicated. So he ran. Again, leaving all of you to face the consequences of his actions." I closed my laptop and stood up. "I want you all to think very carefully about what happens next. You can continue lying and protecting David while he disappears with stolen money, or you can cooperate with authorities and try to minimize the damage to your own lives." I walked toward the door, then turned back. "I am not doing this to destroy our family. I am doing this because David already destroyed our family 3 years ago, and you all chose to help him do it, rather than face the truth." As I reached for the door handle, Dad called out, "Scarlett, what would it take? What would it take for you to give us a chance to handle this privately?" I paused my hand on the doorknob. "Full confession, complete financial accounting of every stolen dollar, David's current location and identity documents, cooperation with law enforcement, and a sincere apology for 3 years of lies and manipulation. And if we do that, then I will ask Detective Martinez to consider your cooperation when determining charges. That is the best I can offer." I left them sitting in that living room, probably planning their next move. But it did not matter anymore. The wheels of justice were already turning, and my family was about to learn that some betrayals have consequences that cannot be escaped. Detective Martinez called me at 6 a.m. the next morning, 3 hours before my scheduled flight to Colorado. "Miss Henderson, we need to accelerate our timeline. Your Uncle David attempted to withdraw $200,000 from a bank in Reno yesterday afternoon. When the transaction was flagged for suspicious activity, he fled the scene. We have reason to believe he is planning to leave the country." I sat up in bed, instantly awake. "How do you know this?" "Your family contacted us last night. Your father called our tip line around midnight and provided David's current identity documents, banking information, and location. They are cooperating fully with our investigation." My family had actually done it. They had chosen truth over continued deception, probably realizing that their situation was hopeless once Emma and I had both contacted authorities. "Detective, what happens now?" "We have issued a federal warrant for David's arrest on charges of fraud, identity theft, and money laundering. The FBI is coordinating with Nevada State Police to locate him. We also need you to come in as soon as possible to provide a formal statement." I called Patricia Wong and explained the situation. She agreed to fly to Colorado with me to ensure my rights were protected during the interview process. When we arrived at the Colorado State Police headquarters that afternoon, Detective Martinez introduced us to FBI agent Sarah Chen, who was leading the federal investigation. "Miss Henderson, your family's cooperation has been extraordinary. They have provided us with detailed financial records, communication logs, and even security footage from your uncle's various residences over the past 3 years." Agent Chen pulled up a digital map on her computer screen, showing locations across Nevada, Utah, and California. "Your uncle has been living under the identity Michael Davidson using fraudulent documents that your cousin Jake helped him obtain. They established a network of shell companies to launder money from the estate theft and insurance fraud." "How much money are we talking about?" "Including the estate theft, attempted insurance fraud, and money laundering penalties, we estimate the total financial damage at over $1.2 million. I felt dizzy. What had started as a $200,000 theft had snowballed into a massive criminal enterprise that had consumed my entire family. "Miss Henderson, we need you to understand that your family members are facing serious charges. However, their cooperation and your evidence have been instrumental in building this case. The prosecutor is willing to consider reduced sentences in exchange for continued cooperation and full restitution." We spent 4 hours going through every detail of my investigation. I provided the professional photos, bank records, text message, screenshots, and Emma's financial documentation. Agent Chen recorded my formal statement and had me sign multiple affidavits. As we finished the interview, Detective Martinez received a radio call. He stepped away for a moment, then returned with a grim expression. "We found David. He was attempting to cross into Mexico using a fake passport. Border Patrol arrested him about an hour ago." The relief I felt was overwhelming. After 3 years of lies and manipulation, David was finally in custody. Justice was not just an abstract concept anymore. It was happening in real time. But Agent Chen's next words sobered me quickly. "Miss Henderson, David is claiming that your family forced him to fake his death. He says he was threatened and coerced into this scheme, and that he was trying to escape their control when he attempted to flee the country." Even in handcuffs, David was still lying still, trying to manipulate the situation to his advantage. He was throwing my parents, Melody and Jake, under the bus to save himself. "Agent Chen, I have 3 years' worth of evidence that proves David orchestrated this entire scheme. My family was protecting him, not controlling him. We know. The evidence you provided makes it clear that David was the mastermind, but his legal team will likely try to paint him as a victim of family coercion. This case is going to get complicated." Patricia leaned forward. "What does this mean for Scarlett's family members?" "It means they need to prepare for a long legal battle. David's defense strategy will be to shift blame onto his family members. However, the evidence strongly supports the prosecution's case that David initiated and led this criminal conspiracy." As we left the police station, I called my parents. Mom answered on the first ring, her voice hoarse from crying. "Scarlett, honey, we heard they arrested David. Is it over?" "Mom, it is just beginning. David is claiming you all forced him to fake his death. He is trying to make himself look like the victim." The silence on the other end of the line was deafening. Finally, Dad's voice came through the speaker. "Of course he is. Even now he is still lying, still trying to save himself by destroying everyone else." "Dad, you need to get a lawyer immediately. All of you need lawyers. David is not going to protect anyone but himself." "Scarlett, I know we do not deserve to ask you for anything, but we need your help. You have evidence that proves David was in control of this scheme. Without your testimony, he might succeed in making us look like the masterminds." The irony was staggering. The family that had excluded me, lied to me, and threatened me was now begging for my help to prove their innocence against the very criminal they had been protecting. "I will testify to the truth," I said finally. "I will not let David rewrite history to suit his defense strategy. But I want you all to understand something. I am not doing this to save you. I am doing this because the truth matters, and David has caused enough damage with his lies." Over the following weeks, the case exploded into national news. "Family helps brother fake death in $1 million fraud scheme" became a headline that dominated social media and cable news. Our family photos were plastered across news websites, and reporters camped outside my parents' house. The insurance company filed a civil lawsuit seeking triple damages. The IRS opened an investigation into unreported income and tax evasion. Jake was arrested on money laundering charges. Melody lost her job when her employer learned about her involvement in the scheme. But the most devastating revelation came when Agent Chen called me with an update on David's arrest. "Miss Henderson, we found something disturbing in David's possession when he was arrested. He had detailed surveillance photos of you, your home, your workplace, and your daily routines. He also had a burner phone with text messages discussing eliminating the problem if you continued investigating." My blood turned to ice. "Are you saying he was planning to hurt me?" "We believe David viewed you as the biggest threat to his freedom. The threatening text you received was just the beginning. We found evidence that he was researching ways to discredit you or potentially cause you physical harm. The man my family had been protecting for 3 years had been planning to silence me permanently. They had chosen his safety over mine, never realizing that their loyalty could have cost me my life. As I hung up the phone, I realized that exposing this conspiracy had not just been about justice or money. It had literally been a matter of survival. The federal courthouse in Denver was packed with reporters and curious onlookers on the morning of David's arraignment. I sat in the front row flanked by Patricia Wong and Agent Chen, watching as the man who had terrorized my family for 3 years was led into the courtroom in shackles. David had aged badly during his years of hiding. His hair was completely gray now, his face gaunt and weathered. But his eyes still held that same manipulative gleam I remembered from childhood, the look of someone who believed he could talk his way out of any situation. His lawyer, an expensive suited man from Las Vegas, immediately launched into a defense strategy that made my stomach turn. David was the victim of an abusive family dynamic. He had been coerced into faking his death by relatives who threatened to turn him over to dangerous criminals. He had been living in fear for 3 years, unable to contact authorities because his own family was monitoring his every move. The prosecutor district attorney Rebecca Martinez systematically dismantled these claims with the evidence I had provided. Bank records showing David initiating financial transactions, communication logs proving he had contacted my family, not the other way around. Security footage of David moving freely between multiple residences, clearly not living under any kind of family control. But the most damaging evidence came from David's own behavior after his arrest. Phone calls from jail recorded by authorities revealed him trying to coordinate stories with accomplices, attempting to intimidate witnesses, and even offering bribes to people who might testify against him. During a particularly heated exchange with his lawyer, David forgot he was being recorded and said, "I do not care what happens to my family. They were useful idiots who did what I told them. If they go down for this, that is their problem." Those words played in open court destroyed any remaining sympathy for his victim narrative. Judge Patricia Thornton set bail at $2 million, which David could not post. He would remain in federal custody while awaiting trial. As we left the courthouse, Agent Chen pulled me aside. "Miss Henderson, David's accomplices in Nevada, have been cooperating with our investigation. They have provided information about other criminal activities David was involved in during his years in hiding." "What kind of activities?" "Identity theft rings, credit card fraud, potentially human trafficking. David was not just hiding from his past crimes. He was actively committing new ones. The people your family thought they were protecting was running a much larger criminal operation." The scope of David's criminality was staggering. My family had not just been protecting a thief. They had been harboring someone involved in organized crime that victimized dozens of innocent people. Later that week, I flew back to California to testify before a federal grand jury. My parents, Melody and Jake, were all there looking like ghosts of their former selves. The weight of their decisions had aged them years in just weeks. During a break in testimony, Melody approached me in the hallway. Her eyes were red from constant crying, and she looked like she had not slept in days. "Scarlett, I need you to know how sorry I am. Not just for lying to you, but for what we put you through. The isolation, the gaslighting, making you feel crazy for seeking the truth." "Melody, why did you post that photo? If you wanted to keep David's resurrection secret, why did you document it on social media?" She laughed bitterly. "Because I thought I was being clever. I thought if I posted it and then quickly deleted it, I could claim it was a mistake if anyone questioned it later. I never imagined you would screenshot it so quickly." "So you were planning to gaslight me even more?" "Yes. God help me, yes. We had a whole plan to convince you that you had misidentified someone in the background of a quickly deleted photo. We were going to tell you that grief was making you see things that were not there. The casual cruelty of their deception took my breath away. They had been prepared to destroy my mental health to protect David's secret. My father's testimony was the most devastating. Under oath, he detailed how David had manipulated the entire family, playing on their love and loyalty to make them accomplices in his crimes. David told us that dangerous people were looking for him, Dad testified. He said that if we did not help him disappear, they would hurt our entire family. He showed us photos of what these people supposedly did to other families who did not pay their debts. The prosecutor showed Dad several printed photographs. Mr. Henderson, do you recognize these images? Yes, those are the photos David showed us to prove how dangerous his situation was. These images were downloaded from crime scene websites and movie special effects portfolios. Your brother was using fictional violence to terrorize you into compliance. Dad broke down completely on the witness stand. The man who had raised me, who had always seemed strong and decisive, crumbled as he realized how thoroughly he had been manipulated. During my own testimony, I presented the complete timeline of my investigation from the anniversary party photo through David's arrest. The prosecutor asked me to explain why I had continued investigating despite my family's attempts to stop me. Because truth matters, I said, looking directly at the grand jury. Because justice delayed is justice denied. Because allowing criminals to escape consequences only encourages more criminal behavior. But the most powerful moment came when the prosecutor asked about the impact of my family's betrayal. Miss Henderson, how has this experience affected your relationship with your family? I took a deep breath before answering. They chose to protect someone who was planning to hurt me rather than trust me with the truth. They gaslit me for 3 years, making me doubt my own perceptions and judgment. They excluded me from family events and treated me like a threat to be managed rather than a loved one to be protected. Do you believe your family can recover from this betrayal? I believe people can change and relationships can heal, but only if there is genuine accountability and a commitment to truth. Some of my family members have shown that commitment. Others continue to make excuses for their behavior. The grand jury returned indictments against David on 47 federal charges. My parents and Melody were indicted on lesser charges related to conspiracy and obstruction of justice. Jake, who had been more actively involved in the money laundering scheme, faced more serious charges, but was offered a plea deal in exchange for continued cooperation. As we left the federal building that day, I realized that the family I had grown up with no longer existed. The lies and betrayals had destroyed something that could never be rebuilt in the same form. But for the first time in 3 years, I felt like I could breathe freely. The truth was finally in the open, and justice was being served. 2 years later, I stood in the lobby of the federal prison in Colorado, waiting to visit David one final time before his transfer to a maximum security facility. He had been sentenced to 25 years for fraud, money laundering, identity theft, and conspiracy charges. The judge had been particularly harsh because of the scope of his crimes and his complete lack of remorse. The man who walked into the visitation room bore little resemblance to the confident manipulator who had terrorized my family. Prison had broken something fundamental in David's spirit. His shoulders slumped with defeat, and his eyes held none of their former cunning. "Hello, Uncle David." He looked up at me with something approaching surprise. "Scarlett, I did not expect to see you here." I wanted to understand something. After everything that happened, after all the evidence against you, do you still believe you were justified in what you did? David was quiet for a long moment, staring at his hands folded on the metal table between us. Finally, he spoke. "I told myself I was protecting the family from dangerous people. But the truth is, I was the dangerous person. I was willing to destroy anyone who threatened my plans, including you." It was the first honest thing I had heard him say in my entire life. "David, did you ever love us, your family? I loved what you could do for me. I loved how easily you believed my lies and how willing you were to sacrifice for someone you thought needed help. But real love, the kind that puts other people's welfare ahead of your own, no, I do not think I am capable of that." His honesty was almost more disturbing than his lies had been. This was a man who viewed human relationships as tools to be used for personal gain. The surveillance photos of me, the plans to discredit or hurt me if I got too close to the truth. How far were you willing to go? David's expression hardened. As far as necessary. You were going to destroy everything I had built. I could not let that happen. Everything you built was based on theft and deception. Everything everyone builds is based on taking advantage of opportunities and other people's weaknesses. I just did it more efficiently than most. As I left the prison that day, I felt a strange sense of closure. David was exactly who I had always suspected he was, a predator who had used family loyalty as a weapon against people who loved him. My parents had served 18 months in minimum security prison and were now on probation. Dad had lost his job at the engineering firm, and Mom's nursing license had been permanently revoked. They lived in a small apartment now, their dream retirement destroyed by the legal fees and restitution payments. But they had done something that surprised me. They had attended family therapy and taken full responsibility for their actions. Mom had written me a letter that arrived on the 2nd anniversary of David's arrest. "Scarlett," the letter read, "I want you to know that I finally understand what we did to you. We did not just lie about David's death. We gaslit you, isolated you, and made you doubt your own perceptions, because it was easier than facing the truth about what we were doing. We chose a criminal over our own daughter, and there is no excuse for that betrayal. I do not expect you to forgive us, but I want you to know that we finally see our actions clearly, and we are deeply ashamed." Melody had lost her marketing job and struggled to find new employment with a criminal record. But she had used the time to go back to school and become a certified domestic violence counselor. She called me every few months not to ask for forgiveness, but to update me on her progress in understanding how manipulation and coercion work in families. "I need to understand how David was able to control us so completely," she had told me during one conversation. "Not just for my own healing, but so I can help other families recognize the warning signs." Jake had served 2 years and was now living in a halfway house in Nevada, working to pay restitution to his victims. He had sent me a letter apologizing for his role in the conspiracy, but we had not spoken directly. Emma had become one of my closest allies throughout the legal process. She had testified against Jake and David, despite the family pressure to stay silent. When the trials ended, she moved to California, and we had built a genuine friendship based on honesty and mutual respect. "We survived a family of professional manipulators," she told me over coffee one afternoon. "We should probably write a book about how to spot the warning signs." The insurance company had recovered most of their money through asset seizure and restitution agreements. Grandma Rose's estate had been fully restored with interest, and Emma and I had finally received our proper inheritance shares. But the most meaningful change had been in my own life. The experience of investigating my family's crimes had revealed strengths I never knew I possessed. I had started a consulting business helping families navigate financial fraud and elder abuse cases. "You have a gift for seeing patterns that other people miss," Patricia Wong had told me when I asked for her opinion about my business plan. "And you understand how family dynamics can be weaponized by criminals. There are a lot of families who could benefit from your expertise. My first major case involved a family whose elderly patriarch had supposedly given away his entire estate to a new girlfriend none of them had met. Using the investigative techniques I had developed during David's case, I discovered that the girlfriend was actually part of a romance scam ring that had stolen over $2 million from vulnerable seniors. The case made national news, and my consulting business grew rapidly. I specialized in financial crimes within families, helping people navigate the complex emotions involved when loved ones become criminals. As I sat in my new office reviewing case files and preparing for client meetings, I often thought about the journey that had brought me here. 3 years ago, I had been a divorced woman struggling with family relationships I did not understand. Now I was a successful business owner who had helped dozens of families recover from financial betrayal. The phone rang, interrupting my thoughts. It was Detective Martinez calling with updates about a new case that had connections to David's criminal network. Miss Henderson, we have identified 12 other families who were victimized by the identity theft ring David was involved with. Several of them have asked specifically to work with you on recovery efforts. As I scheduled appointments with these new clients, I realized that David's crimes had created something he never intended: a network of survivors who were stronger together than they had been apart. That evening, I had dinner with Emma and my new boyfriend, Marcus, whom I had met through my victim advocacy work. As we talked about our plans for the weekend, I felt something I had not experienced in years: peace. My original family had been destroyed by lies and betrayal, but I had built a new chosen family based on honesty, mutual respect, and shared values. Sometimes the greatest justice is not punishment for wrongdoers, but the opportunity for survivors to create something better from the ashes of destruction. Have you ever had to choose between family loyalty and doing what you knew was right? Sometimes the people who are supposed to protect us become the ones we need protection from. This story taught me that blood relationships do not automatically deserve blind loyalty, and that a real family is built on trust, honesty, and genuine care for each other's well-being. If this story resonated with you, please let me know in the comments below how you have handled family betrayals in your own life. Do not forget to like this video. If you believe justice was served, subscribe for more true family drama stories, and share this with someone who needs to hear that choosing truth over family pressure is sometimes the bravest thing you can do. Thank you for listening to my story, and remember that sometimes the family you choose is stronger than the family you are born into. Until next time, keep seeking truth and standing up for what is right, even when it costs you everything.